The orphan worked in the mines until the cowboy found his father's watch around the boy's neck. The gun was already halfway out of its holster when Cole saw the silver chain. It caught the weak light filtering through the mouth of the mine shaft, just a glint, barely there, like a star trying to shine through smoke. But Cole knew that chain. He knew the weight of it, the way it coiled in a man's palm, the small dent near the clasp where his father had dropped it once while shoeing a horse. He knew it the way a man knows his own heartbeat. And it was hanging around the neck of a child. The boy stood frozen against the mine wall, his hands raised slow and trembling, palms out like he was trying to calm a wild animal. Cold dust covered him head to toe, his face, his torn shirt, the bare feet that looked more like leather than skin. He couldn't have been more than 12 years old, maybe younger, the kind of young that should have been running through fields or learning to ride, not buried in the dark belly of a copper mine where grown men went to forget their names. Cole's hand tightened on the grip of his revolver. The metal was warm from his body heat, familiar, almost comforting. He'd drawn this gun 100 times, maybe more. It had become a part of him the way a rider becomes part of his horse. So naturally he didn't have to think about it anymore. But this time, his hand wouldn't move. "Where did you get that?" Cole's voice came out low and rough, like gravel under a wagon wheel. The boy's eyes went wide. They were gray, storm cloud gray, and they held a kind of emptiness that Cole recognized. He'd seen it in mirrors, in the faces of drifters and outlaws, and men who'd lost everything worth holding on to. The boy's voice cracked. He swallowed hard, and Cole saw his throat work against the silver chain. "I didn't steal it, mister. I swear I didn't. I asked where you got it." The boy's hands started shaking harder. A thin line of blood ran down his arm from where he'd scraped it on the rock wall, but he didn't seem to notice. His eyes stayed locked on the gun. Cole had come to the mining camp looking for work, honest work, the kind that didn't involve a bullet or a bounty. He'd been riding for 3 weeks, sleeping under stars that felt colder every night, trying to outrun the memory of things he couldn't change. The foreman had pointed him toward the deep shaft, said they needed a man to check the support beams before the next crew went down. He hadn't expected to find a boy working in the dark like a mule. He hadn't expected to see his father's watch. "Talk," Cole said. He still hadn't drawn the gun all the way, but his thumb rested on the hammer. 1 click. That's all it would take. The boy's lips trembled. "A man sold it to me 3 months back. I was hungry, mister. I hadn't eaten in 2 days, and he said he'd trade it for the coins I had. It was only 30 cents, but the boy's voice broke completely. He said it was broken anyway. Said it didn't keep time, no more." Cole felt something twist in his chest, sharp and sudden, like a knife slipping between ribs. The watch had been broken. His father had dropped it once years ago, and the gears inside had never worked right after that. But the old man had kept it anyway. Wore it every day. Said a broken watch was still right twice a day, and that was more than most men could say about themselves. Cole had buried him with it 5 years ago, on a hill overlooking a valley that turned gold in the evening light. He'd placed the watch in his father's vest pocket himself, felt the weight of it one last time before closing the coffin. He remembered the sound of dirt hitting wood, remembered riding away without looking back. "You're lying," Cole said, but his voice had lost its edge. "I ain't." The boy's eyes filled with water, but no tears fell. Like he'd learned a long time ago that crying didn't change anything. The man who sold it, he said he got it from a grave robber. Said there's men who dig up the dead when times get hard. Said it ain't personal, just survival. The words hit Cole like a fist to the gut. He'd left his father alone, unguarded. He'd ridden away thinking he'd done his duty, paid his respects, laid the old man to rest proper. But he'd been wrong. Someone had come in the night, dug up the grave, taken the one thing Cole had left behind to keep his father company in the dark. And this boy, this half-starved, cold-dusted child, had traded his last 30 cents for it because it reminded him of something good. Cole finally let go of the gun. It slid back into the holster with a whisper of leather. The boy's shoulders sagged, but he didn't lower his hands. He just stood there, breathing hard, waiting to see what the cowboy would do next. "What's your name?" Cole asked. The boy blinked, surprised. "Ain't got one that matters. Everybody's got a name. Had one once." The boy's voice was barely a whisper now. "But the foreman don't use it. Just calls us by numbers. I'm 23. Cole felt his jaw tighten. He'd heard about the mining camps that bought orphans from the territories, boys with no families, no homes, no one to ask questions when they disappeared underground. They worked them until their lungs gave out or the tunnels caved in. Whichever came first. "How long you been here?" Cole asked. "Year and a half. Maybe 2. Hard to keep track when you don't see the sun much." Cole looked at the boy's hands. They were small, but the palms were thick with calluses and old scars. The kind of hands that had held a pickaxe more than they'd held anything soft. "You got anybody?" Cole asked. "Family? Anyone who'd come looking for you?" The boy shook his head slowly. "No, sir. Ain't nobody." The silence that followed was heavy, thick with dust and unspoken things. Somewhere deeper in the mine, men were shouting, and the sound of metal striking stone echoed through the tunnels like a heartbeat. Cole reached up and touched the brim of his hat, an old habit, something his father used to do when he was thinking. The boy watched him, still wary, still waiting for the world to hurt him again. "That watch," Cole said quietly. "It belonged to my father." The boy's face went pale beneath the coal dust. "I didn't know, mister. I swear I didn't. I know." Cole held up a hand. "I believe you." The boy's mouth opened, then closed. Like he'd been expecting a bullet, not mercy. Cole took a step closer. The boy pressed harder against the wall, but he didn't run. Maybe he was too tired. Maybe he'd learned that running didn't help. "Let me see it," Cole said. The boy's hands moved slow and shaking to the chain around his neck. He lifted it over his head, careful, like it was made of glass instead of silver. He held it out in his palm, and Cole saw how small his hands were, how young he still was, despite everything. Cole took the watch. It was heavier than he remembered. Warmer, too, from hanging against the boy's skin. He turned it over, ran his thumb across the engraved initials on the back, J.M., for Joseph Matthews. His father's name. The watch face was cracked, the hands frozen at 3:30. The same time they'd stopped 5 years ago. "He was a good man," Cole said softly, more to himself than to the boy. "My father. He was the kind of man who'd give you his last dollar if you needed it more than he did." He paused, swallowed against the tightness in his throat. "I didn't do right by him. Should have stayed. Should have." He didn't finish. The boy didn't need to hear the rest. Cole looked up and met the boy's eyes. They were still gray, still tired, but something had shifted in them. A flicker of something that might have been hope, or maybe just confusion. "You keep it," Cole said. The boy stared at him. "What?" "The watch." Cole pressed it back into the boy's palm and closed his fingers around it. "You keep it. But it's yours. It's your pa's." It was. Cole's voice was rough again, but for a different reason now. "But he's gone. And you're still here." The boy's breath caught. His fingers tightened around the watch like it was the only solid thing in the world. Cole stepped back, his boots scraping against the rocky ground. He looked at the boy one more time, really looked at him. Saw the hollow cheeks, the too thin arms, the eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. And something inside him, something he thought had died a long time ago, stirred back to life. "Come on," Cole said. "You're done working in this hole." The boy's eyes went wide. "What?" "You heard me." Cole turned toward the mouth of the mine, where daylight waited like a promise. "You work for me now." The fire was dying when the boy finally spoke. Cole had built it small, just enough to keep the desert cold from settling into their bones. They sat on opposite sides of the flames, the light painting their faces orange and gold, making shadows dance across the rocky ground. The mine was behind them now, a black mouth carved into the hillside, and Cole's horse stood tied to a juniper tree, its breath coming out in soft clouds. The boy hadn't said a word since they'd left the shaft. Not when the foreman tried to stop them. Not when Cole put $20 on the man's desk and told him the boy was bought and paid for. Not even when they rode out into the open desert, where the sky stretched so wide it felt like falling upward. But now, with the stars burning cold overhead and the fire turning to embers, the boy's voice came quiet through the darkness. I didn't mean to keep something that wasn't mine. Cole looked up from the flames. The boy sat with his knees pulled to his chest, the silver chain visible against his dirty shirt. His face was still streaked with coal dust, and his hands were wrapped around the watch like it was the only warm thing in the world. "I know," Cole said, "but I couldn't let it go neither." The boy's voice cracked, raw and tired. "It was the first thing I had that felt, I don't know, like it mattered." Cole poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks rising into the night. He understood that feeling. He'd felt it himself once a long time ago, before the war and the drifting and the years that had worn him down like water on stone. "Tell me about the man who sold it to you," Cole said quietly. The boy was silent for a long moment. Then he took a shaky breath. "He came through the camp about 3 months back. Called himself a trader, but everyone knew what he really was. A scavenger, the kind that picks through what's left after people are done dying." The boy's fingers tightened on the watch. He had a wagon full of things. Rings, boots, belt buckles. Even a Bible with someone's name written inside. Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "I was working a double shift that day," the boy continued. "Hadn't eaten since the morning before. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the pickaxe. The foreman said if I didn't meet my weight quota, I'd lose my supper rations for a week." He paused, swallowing hard. "So when the trader came by, I thought maybe I could trade the 30 cents I'd saved. Get something I could sell for food. But you bought the watch instead." The boy nodded slowly. "I saw it lying there in his wagon, and I don't know what happened. It just looked like something a good man would carry. Something honest. And I thought if I had it, maybe I could remember what that felt like. Being around someone good." Cole felt something twist deep in his chest. He stared into the fire, watching the wood turn black and crumble. "The trader told me it came from a grave up north," the boy said. "Said the grave robber who sold it to him had dug up half a cemetery before the sheriff ran him out of town. Said most of what he found wasn't worth keeping, but this watch, this one still had some shine to it." The words hung in the air like smoke. Cole had buried his father on a Tuesday morning in late autumn, when the leaves were turning gold and the wind carried the smell of rain. It was a small funeral, just Cole, the preacher, and 2 ranch hands who'd worked alongside the old man for years. They'd laid him in a pine box on a hill overlooking the valley, where you could see the cattle grazing and the river cutting silver through the grass. Cole had stayed until the last shovel of dirt was packed down. He'd stood there with his hat in his hands, trying to find words that mattered. But nothing came. So he'd placed the watch in the grave, tucked it into his father's vest pocket like the old man used to wear it, and walked away. He'd told himself it was enough, that he'd done his duty, that his father would have understood why Cole couldn't stay, why he had to keep moving, keep running from the ghosts that followed him. But he'd been wrong. "I should have stayed," Cole said, his voice rough and low. The boy looked up, surprised. "After the funeral," Cole continued, "I should have stayed. Built a fence around the grave. Put up a stone marker. Something to show that the man buried there mattered." He shook his head slowly. "But I didn't. I just left him there alone." The boy was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You think it's your fault someone dug him up? I think I made it easy." The fire crackled, sending another shower of sparks into the night. Cole's horse shifted its weight, and the saddle creaked in the darkness. "My pa's buried somewhere too," the boy said softly. "Don't know where exactly. He died when I was 6. Fever took him in the winter, and the ground was too frozen to dig deep. Ma said they put him in a shallow grave outside of town, marked it with a wooden cross." He paused. By the time spring came, the cross was gone. Probably rotted away, or someone took it for firewood. And I never went back to find him. Cole looked at the boy across the fire. Really looked at him. Saw the way his shoulders curled inward, like he was trying to make himself smaller. Saw the way his eyes stayed fixed on the watch, like if he looked away it might disappear. "That's why you kept it," Cole said quietly. The watch. The boy nodded, and for the first time, his voice broke completely. I thought if I had something that came from a grave, something someone loved enough to bury with their dead, then maybe it was like I was keeping watch for them. Like someone was finally standing guard. The words hit Cole harder than any bullet ever had. He'd spent 5 years telling himself he'd honored his father. 5 years believing that burying him proper was enough. But this boy, this half-starved orphan who'd never known kindness, had done more for Joseph Matthews' memory than his own son ever had. The boy had carried the watch against his heart, had kept it safe in the darkness of the mine, where men forgot their names and their souls, had traded his last chance at a meal just to hold onto something that reminded him of goodness. And Cole had just walked away. I'm sorry, Cole said, and he didn't know if he was talking to the boy or to his father or to the empty sky above them. The boy looked up confused. For what? For not being there. For leaving him unprotected. For letting someone take what should have been sacred. The boy shook his head slowly. You couldn't have known. Doesn't matter. I should have done better. They sat in silence after that, the fire burning down to coals, the night pressing close around them. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called out, and another answered. The sound was lonely and wild, like the land itself crying. Finally, the boy spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. What was he like? Your father. Cole took a breath, surprised by the ache that rose in his throat. He was a rancher, Cole said slowly. Worked the same piece of land for 30 years. Got up before dawn every morning, even when his bones hurt and his hands shook. He believed in keeping your word, paying your debts, and treating every man with respect, even the ones who didn't deserve it. The boy listened, his eyes wide in the firelight. He taught me to ride when I was 5, Cole continued. Taught me to shoot when I was 10. Taught me that a gun was a tool, not a toy, and that every time you drew it, you were making a choice you'd have to live with. He paused, remembering. He wasn't perfect. He drank too much sometimes. Got angry when the cattle prices dropped. But he never raised his hand to anyone who didn't deserve it. And he never turned away a man who needed help. He sounded like a good man, the boy said softly. He was. Then he'd be proud of you. For coming to get me out of that mine. Cole looked at the boy, at the hope flickering in his tired eyes, and felt something crack open inside him. Something that had been locked away for too long. Maybe, Cole said. Or maybe he'd say, I'm 5 years too late. The boy didn't answer. He just held the watch tighter, and Cole saw the way his shoulders shook, like he was crying without making a sound. The fire died completely then, leaving only embers glowing red in the darkness. The desert wind picked up, carrying the smell of sage and dust, and Cole pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders. Get some sleep, Cole said quietly. We've got a long ride tomorrow. The boy lay down on the hard ground, curling onto his side, the watch still clutched in his hand. Within minutes, his breathing evened out, and Cole knew he was asleep, the kind of deep, exhausted sleep that came from working yourself past the point of breaking. Cole stayed awake, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. He thought about his father's grave, overgrown and forgotten on that hilltop. Thought about the man who dug it up, desperate enough to rob the dead. Thought about all the ways a person could fail the people they loved, even after those people were gone. And he thought about the boy, this nameless child who'd carried a stranger's memory better than blood ever had. The wind whispered through the juniper trees, and Cole made himself a promise in the darkness. He didn't know if it was the right promise. Didn't know if it would be enough to make up for the years he'd wasted running. But it was a start. And sometimes a start was all a man had left. The boy collapsed before he reached the water barrel. Cole caught him halfway down, felt the weight of him. Too light, like holding a bundle of sticks wrapped in cloth. The boy's chest heaved, pulling air that wouldn't come, and black dust poured from his mouth with every cough. His eyes rolled back, showing white, and for a moment Cole thought he was watching a child die in his arms. Breathe, Cole said low and steady. Slow. Just breathe. Around them, other workers stumbled from the mine shaft, like ghosts rising from a grave. Men and boys, covered head to toe in coal dust. Their faces so black you couldn't tell their ages. They moved in silence, shoulders bent, eyes on the ground. No one spoke. No one helped. They just shuffled toward the bunkhouse like cattle heading to slaughter. The boy in Cole's arms finally sucked in a full breath. Then another. His fingers clutched at Cole's shirt, holding on like he was drowning. "How long were you down there?" Cole asked. The boy's voice came out as a rasp. "Since before sunrise." Cole looked at the sky. The sun was setting now, painting the desert red and gold. That meant 12 hours. Maybe more. 12 hours breathing poison in the dark, swinging a pickaxe that probably weighed more than the boy did. "Can you stand?" The boy nodded, but when Cole set him on his feet, his legs buckled. Cole caught him again, held him steady until the shaking stopped. "Come on," Cole said. "Let's get you some water." He walked the boy to the barrel near the bunkhouse and helped him drink. The boy's hands trembled so badly he could barely hold the ladle, so Cole held it for him. The water ran down the boy's chin, cutting clean lines through the coal dust, and Cole saw just how young his face really was. 12, maybe. Could have been 10. Too young to be down in that hole. Too young to be dying slow in the dark. Cole had seen the mine operation when he'd first ridden into camp 3 days ago. He'd been looking for work, any work that didn't involve his gun or his past. The foreman had offered him a job checking the support beams, said they needed someone with a steady hand and no fear of tight spaces. Cole had taken it because the pay was decent and because he told himself he was done with violence. But he hadn't asked questions. Hadn't looked too close at who was doing the digging. Now he couldn't stop looking. "You got a name?" Cole asked quietly. The boy wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Foreman calls me 23. That's not a name. That's a number. It's what I answer to." Cole's jaw tightened. He looked past the boy toward the mine entrance, where more workers were emerging. He counted them as they came out. 15 men, 8 boys. All of them moving like the living dead. "Where are the others?" Cole asked. The boy followed his gaze. "What others?" "The foreman sheet says there's 32 workers on this shift. I count 23. The boy's face went blank. Empty. Like he'd learned not to feel things anymore. "Some don't come back up," he said simply. The words hit Cole like a fist. He turned and looked at the mine shaft, just a black hole carved into the hillside, timber beams framing the entrance like a mouth frozen open. There were no safety ropes, no warning signs, no rules posted about how deep to dig or how long to work. Just darkness and the promise of copper. "Where's the owner?" Cole asked, his voice harder now. The boy hesitated. "Mr. Garrison?" "That his name?" "Yes, sir. He runs the camp. Has an office in the main building." The boy's voice dropped lower. "But he don't like to be bothered. Especially not by workers." "I'm not a worker." Cole stood and started walking toward the main building. Behind him, he heard the boy call out, something that sounded like a warning. But Cole didn't stop. His boots hit the dirt hard, raising small clouds of dust, and his hand moved to rest on the grip of his revolver. The building was larger than the others, made of rough-cut planks with a tin roof that caught the last light of the sun. A sign above the door read, "Garrison Mining Company," in painted letters that were starting to peel. Cole didn't knock. He pushed the door open and walked inside. The office was neat and organized, nothing like the squalor of the bunkhouse. There was a desk made of dark wood, papers stacked in careful piles, a kerosene lamp burning warm and yellow. On the wall hung a map of the mine tunnels, marked with numbers and measurements. And behind the desk sat a man in a clean white shirt, smoking a cigar that probably cost more than the boy made in a month. Garrison looked up, his eyes sharp and calculating. He was middle-aged, with silver threading through his dark hair and soft hands that had never held a pickaxe. The kind of man who made his money off other people's suffering and slept just fine at night. "Can I help you?" Garrison's voice was smooth, polite, like they were discussing the weather. "I want to buy one of your workers," Cole said. Garrison's eyebrows rose. "Buy." The boy. Number 23. Garrison leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking. He took a long pull from his cigar and blew the smoke toward the ceiling. The workers aren't for sale. They're contracted. How much does he owe you? That's between me and the boy. Cole took a step closer to the desk. His hand stayed on his gun. How much? Garrison's eyes flicked down to the revolver, then back up to Cole's face. Something shifted in his expression, a calculation being made, numbers adding up behind his eyes. $200, Garrison said. Plus interest. Call it $250 total. It was robbery. Cole knew it. The boy probably didn't know half that much. But arguing would take time, and time meant the boy would spend another night in that bunkhouse, another day underground. Cole reached into his coat and pulled out a leather pouch. He counted out bills onto the desk, everything he'd saved over the past 6 months. Work money. Honest money. The kind he'd been planning to use to buy his own piece of land somewhere, settle down, stop running. But looking at those bills, he realized his father would have done the same thing. Would have emptied his pockets without a second thought if it meant saving a child. $250, Cole said, placing the last bill on the desk. Garrison smiled. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. He picked up the money, counted it slowly, then tucked it into a drawer. Pleasure doing business with you, Garrison said. Though I have to say, you're making a poor investment. Boy's half dead already. Probably won't last the year, even if you take him out of the mine. Cole's hand tightened on his gun, but he didn't draw it. Not yet. He's not an investment, Cole said quietly. He's a human being. Garrison shrugged, like the distinction didn't matter. Whatever helps you sleep at night, cowboy. The word came out like an insult, and Cole felt his jaw clench. He wanted to reach across that desk, wanted to show this man what it felt like to be powerless, to have your life bought and sold like livestock. But he didn't. Because his father had taught him that violence was easy. It was mercy that took strength. Write up the release, Cole said. Now. Garrison sighed, like Cole was wasting his time, but he pulled out a piece of paper and began writing. His pen scratched across the page, slow and deliberate, forming words that meant the boy was free. When he was done, he slid the paper across the desk. Sign here, Garrison said, pointing. Cole signed without reading it. He didn't care about the fine print. He just wanted to get the boy out of this place before the sun finished setting. Garrison blotted the ink and handed Cole a copy. He's yours now. Good luck with him. Cole folded the paper and tucked it into his coat. He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. One more thing, Cole said, not looking back. What's that? If I hear you're buying more children, if I hear about one more boy disappearing into that mine, I'll come back. And next time, I won't be paying in cash. Garrison's smile faded. Is that a threat? Cole turned then and let the man see his eyes. Let him see the years of violence and regret and all the things Cole had done that he couldn't take back. It's a promise, Cole said. He walked out into the evening air, where the boy was still standing by the water barrel, watching. When the boy saw Cole coming, something changed in his face, something that looked almost like hope. You're coming with me, Cole said. The boy blinked. What? You don't work for Garrison anymore. You work for me now. The boy's mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes filled with something Cole couldn't quite name, disbelief, maybe, or fear that this was just another cruelty dressed up as kindness. I don't understand, the boy whispered. You don't have to, Cole said. He put a hand on the boy's thin shoulder, felt the bones beneath the skin. Just pack whatever you have. We're leaving tonight. The boy stood frozen for a long moment. Then slowly his face crumpled, and tears cut clean paths through the coal dust on his cheeks. Cole didn't tell him to stop crying. Didn't tell him to be strong or to hold it together. He just stood there with his hand on the boy's shoulder and let him break. Because sometimes breaking was the first step toward being whole again. And as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, leaving the desert in shadow, Cole made himself a silent vow. He would do right by this boy, would teach him what it meant to be treated with dignity, would show him that not every man in the world was like Garrison, cruel and cold and counting children like coins. It wouldn't fix the past. Wouldn't bring back his father or erase the years Cole had wasted. But it was something. And in the fading light of a dying day, something felt like enough. Cole's hands were shaking when he reached for the watch. They'd been riding for 3 days, slow and steady across the open plains, where the grass stretched to the horizon and the sky felt bigger than God. The boy rode behind him on the same horse, his thin arms wrapped around Cole's waist, holding on like he was afraid of falling into nothing. They hadn't talked much. The boy was still learning to trust silence that wasn't heavy with threat, and Cole was still learning how to be around someone who needed him. So they rode quiet, stopping only to water the horse and eat the dried meat and hardtack Cole had packed from the mining camp. But on the 4th morning, as the sun broke golden over the plains and the dew caught fire on the grass, something made Cole pull the horse to a stop. Maybe it was the way the light hit the silver chain around the boy's neck. Maybe it was the memory of his father's hands, worn and scarred, slipping the watch into a vest pocket for the last time. Or maybe it was just that Cole couldn't carry the weight of not knowing anymore. "Let me see it," Cole said quietly. The boy went still behind him. "Sir." "The watch." "Let me see it." There was a long pause. Then the boy's arms loosened, and Cole felt him lean back. When Cole turned in the saddle, the boy's face was pale, his eyes wide with something that looked like fear. "You're not taking it back, are you?" The boy's voice cracked. "You said I could keep it." "I'm not taking it," Cole said. "I just need to look at something." The boy hesitated, then slowly reached up and lifted the chain over his head. He held the watch in his palm like it was made of glass, and Cole saw his fingers trembling. Cole took it carefully, feeling the familiar weight settle into his hand. He turned it over, ran his thumb across the engraved initials, JM, then found the small clasp on the side. His father had shown him this once years ago, but Cole had forgotten about it until now. The watch had a secret. He pressed the clasp, and the back of the watch popped open. Inside, protected behind a thin piece of glass, was a photograph. Cole's breath stopped. It was a woman, young, maybe 20, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that held sadness and hope in equal measure. She wore a simple dress, the kind a farm wife might wear, and in her arms she held a baby wrapped in a white blanket. The photograph was old, faded at the edges, but the woman's face was clear enough. Beautiful. Heartbroken. Gone. "That's my ma," the boy whispered. Cole looked up sharply. "What?" The boy was staring at the photograph, his face pale as creek water. "That's her. That's my mother." Cole's heart started hammering in his chest. "You're sure?" "I'd know her anywhere." The boy's voice shook. "I only got one memory of her, just one, from when I was real small. But I remember her holding me just like that. Remember the way she smelled like bread and lavender. Remember her singing something soft while I fell asleep." Cole looked back at the photograph, at the woman holding the baby, at the way her eyes looked straight at whoever was taking the picture, like she was trying to memorize their face. "How old were you when she died?" Cole asked, his voice rough. 6, maybe 7. Pa said she got sick one winter and just never got better. Said she made him promise to keep me safe, no matter what. The boy's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He tried. He really did. But then he died too, and there was no one left. Cole felt something cold settle in his stomach. He looked at the photograph again, really looked at it. At the curve of the woman's jaw, at the shape of her eyes, at the baby in her arms. And suddenly, pieces started falling into place. His father had been married before Cole's mother. Everyone in town knew that, but no one talked about it much. The story Cole had always heard was simple. Joseph Matthews had loved a woman named Sarah, and she died in childbirth. The baby died too. It was a tragedy, people said, but it was a long time ago, and Joseph had moved on, married again, started over. But what if the baby hadn't died? What if Joseph had lied? "What was your mother's name?" Cole asked quietly. "Sarah," the boy said. "Sarah Fletcher. That was her name before she married my pa." The world tilted. Cole stared at the boy, really saw him for the first time. The gray eyes, the shape of his face, the way he held his shoulders, straight and stubborn even when he was afraid. He looked like Joseph Matthews. He looked like Cole's father. What was your father's name? Cole's voice came out hoarse. The boy hesitated. Why? Just tell me. Fletcher. Thomas Fletcher. He was a farmer. Had a small place east of here before. No, Cole interrupted. I mean your real father. Your blood father. The boy's face went blank. I don't understand. Cole closed his eyes, trying to steady his breathing. His mind was racing, pulling up memories he'd half forgotten. His father taking trips sometimes, disappearing for days or weeks at a time. His mother's tight-lipped silence about where he'd gone. The arguments Cole had heard through closed doors. His mother's voice sharp with hurt. You still love her. After all these years, you still love her. Cole had been too young to understand then. But now, my father, Cole said slowly, opening his eyes. Joseph Matthews. He knew your mother, didn't he? The boy's face twisted with confusion. I don't know. Maybe? Ma never talked about her life before Pa. And Pa, he always got sad when I asked about her past. Cole looked down at the photograph again. At the woman holding the baby. At the watch that Joseph Matthews had carried every day for 30 years. A watch he'd been buried with. A watch that held the picture of a woman who wasn't Cole's mother. Thomas Fletcher wasn't your father, Cole said quietly. The boy went very still. What? He raised you. He loved you. But he wasn't your blood. Cole looked up, met the boy's eyes. My father was. The silence that followed was so complete that Cole could hear his own heartbeat, could hear the wind moving through the grass, could hear the horse breathing steady and calm beneath him. The boy's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes were wide, filling with something too big to name. That's why the watch has her picture, Cole continued, his voice rough with emotion. That's why my father kept it all these years, even after he married my mother. That's why he never let anyone open it. He paused, swallowing hard. He loved your mother. And he loved you. But for some reason, maybe because she was already married, maybe because the town wouldn't have understood, he let Thomas Fletcher claim you as his own. No, the boy whispered. That can't be right. Look at the photograph. Really look at it. The boy took the watch with shaking hands and stared at the image behind the glass. His breathing got faster, harder, and Cole saw the moment when understanding hit him. Saw it break across his face like dawn breaking over the plains. The baby, the boy said. That's me. Yes. And the man who owned this watch was your father. Your real father. The boy looked up at Cole, his eyes swimming with tears that wouldn't fall. Then that means your brother, Cole finished. Half-brother anyway. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and impossible and true. The boy's face crumpled. His shoulders shook, and the watch slipped from his fingers. Cole caught it before it hit the ground, then reached out and pulled the boy close. The boy collapsed against him, finally letting himself cry, deep, wrenching sobs that sounded like they'd been locked inside for years. Cole held him tight, one hand on the back of the boy's head, the other wrapped around his thin shoulders. He felt the way the boy's whole body shook, felt the tears soaking into his shirt, felt the weight of all that grief finally finding a place to land. I got you, Cole said quietly. I got you. They stayed like that for a long time. The cowboy and the boy, the brother and the brother, while the sun climbed higher and the plains stretched endless around them. The horse stood patient and still, and somewhere far away a hawk cried out, circling on the wind. Finally, the boy's sobs quieted to hiccups, then to silence. He pulled back, wiping his face with his sleeve, looking embarrassed. I'm sorry, the boy said. I didn't mean to. Don't, Cole said firmly. Don't apologize for crying. You've earned it. The boy nodded, then looked down at the watch still in Cole's hand. Can I keep it? Even now that you know. Cole opened the watch one more time, looked at the photograph of Sarah Fletcher holding her baby boy. Then he closed it carefully and placed the chain back around the boy's neck. It's yours, Cole said. Always was. The boy's hand came up to touch the watch, holding it against his chest like a promise. What do I call you? The boy asked quietly. Now that you're... Cole thought about it. Thought about the word brother, and how strange it felt on his tongue. Thought about his father, carrying this secret to his grave. Thought about all the years they'd lost, all the years they could have known each other. "How about you start by telling me your real name?" Cole said. "Not 23. Your name. The one your mother gave you." The boy's lips trembled. "Samuel. My name's Samuel." "Samuel," Cole repeated, and it felt right. Felt true. "That's a good name. A strong name. What do I call you?" Cole looked at the boy, at Samuel, his half-brother, his father's hidden son, and felt something shift inside him. Something that had been broken for a long time finally settling back into place. "Cole," he said simply. "Just Cole." Samuel nodded slowly. Then, hesitant, he said, "Where are we going?" Now that we're "West," Cole said. He turned back around in the saddle and gathered the reins. "We're going west. There's a valley my father used to talk about. Good land, good water, room enough to start over." He paused. "Room enough for both of us." Samuel's arms wrapped around Cole's waist again, but this time the grip felt different. Stronger. Like he was holding on to something real, instead of just trying not to fall. Cole urged the horse forward, and they rode into the morning light. Two brothers who'd found each other through a stolen watch and a buried truth. And as the plains opened up before them, vast and golden and full of possibility, Cole realized something his father had known all along. Some things that look stolen are really just waiting to come home.